Welcome, Kala. Sounds good, Kala. Tell me if you can hear me. So nice to have you back, Ella. If you want to say what's going into your seafood salad, that would be great. Testing audio 1 2 3. Testing audio 1 2 3. Welcome back, Hala. Testing audio 1 2 3. Testing audio 1 2 3. What do you have in the seafood salad, Hala? I will begin right now. Okay, so tonight we will go over the last few days. Specifically, let's see, the 20th through the 23rd of August 2022, before we get to Dover, which we'll do next week because there's a lot of pictures there. That'll be a whole night to itself. And then the week after that, we'll do all the days before we get to September, rain days of September. And then once we get to September, the tempo massively increases, and we're going to do just 1 or 2 days per night. So let's switch. We're still in London. So let's go on a tour. So, um, so this is, I think, the Royal Navy headquarters again. They have some of this architecture, which is very pretty. Probably dates to like Nelson's time or something. There's a whole bunch of statues like this. I only got one of them. There's the egg building. I forget what that's called, but that's a nice picture. These guys down here. Aloha Jam. And now we're downtown. I think this was more downtown, the square mile of the City of London downtown. So here's some big buildings downtown. As I said, I was pretty much like up the A10, which is the bridge that, or the road that goes from London Bridge up to Cambridge and eventually to York. The original Roman road in Britain. And so you just go down that, take the bus down there, and you just head west a little bit, and you end up basically downtown. So there's some big buildings. And Costa Coffee is like the Starbucks of the UK. Everybody goes to Costa. And then this is, I don't remember which station this was. I'll figure it out in a minute. See the underground, the overground, bus Elizabeth line. The Elizabeth line is the latest line in the underground to be built. It's built a couple years ago. Some scenes. Oh, this is St. Pancras Station. Right, you can tell by the yellow brick facade. So as you go from Shoreditch and Hackney and Whitechapel on the east side of town. You go through the city, go to the other side of the city, and then you end up in the lower parts of Islington and Camden, which is where this is. Sort of the opposite side of downtown. And that contains, St. Pancras Station, King's Cross Station, Euston Station, and the British Library, and I think the British Museum as well, but I didn't get to that actually. If anybody has any questions, obviously put them in the chat. Yes, the British are very proud of this particular building. I once had some questions about it, and they took offense that I was less than impressed. So, okay, Kella, you can listen along. So here's another shot, different people. I like train stations because all the people and all the busyness and all that. Oh, and here's the thing about the St. Pancras station. So you enter from the red brick or yellow brick facade, which you see in the background. And then on the left here is a platform. It's actually, the trains actually are above you, and there's like shops below the train tracks. But because the platform is above, you have to go, for some reason, all the way around this platform, all the way down the station, and then all the way down the other side of the station to get to the second half of the station. And the station consists of two parts. There's the tracks you see here above us. For some reason, there's no tunnel underneath. You'd think there'd be like a tunnel or something, which you have to go. It's like a quarter mile down, to a quarter mile all the way back again on the other side. And this is the local tracks. If you go or is it? I forget which. Well, which one it is. One of the tracks is the local tracks, which basically take you to the east of England. We're eventually going to take this to go to Dover later on. But the east part of England. But the other station, I think it's the farther one. The other station that's farther away is the Eurostar station. So that will take similar tracks to going east, but eventually, of course, it goes underneath the English Channel and eventually ends up in France and stuff. So if you're going to take the Eurostar to Paris or Brussels, you'd actually start off here at St. Pancras. But you have to go like all the way around and all the way around to get to it. It's very confusing. And if you don't know where you're going, you can think that like this is all the station is, and then actually you have to go all around just to get to the part you're trying to go. It's very weird. There's no direct, as far as I know, street access to the Eurostar station. You have to enter through the main entrance only. It's so strange. And if you're coming in from the underground or the buses or anything, you have to come into the main entrance and walk half a mile to get through the building to get there. So good luck. I had to go through here multiple times before I figured that out. Because you think this is the whole station. Right? Go all the way in the station. That's the end of the station. No, it goes keep on going around. And you go all the way down that way, and then that's like the other part. It's very strange. Okay. Very confusing. Oh, where, Jan? Like when I was there? And okay, then this is the tracks for Greater Anglia, which will take us east later on. And so all you have to do is normally you'd have your ticket, a paper ticket, you can put in a little slot here, and then there's a way to kind of, if you have an electronic ticket, you can tap your phone, and that'll open up the barriers and allow you onto the platform, and then you can board the train. Oh, when I was here, it was like the British considered it to be a heat wave, which is like 30 Celsius or something. It was usually in like 70s, 80s. I don't think it ever topped the 90s Fahrenheit, so it's like, 30 C at most. But they considered it to be extremely hot over there. They were just melting or something. They're telling me they were melting in it with the heat wave. They couldn't tolerate it. You have to understand, because it doesn't really grow that hot in that country, the average temperature in summer is like 60s and 70s, and then in the winter it goes down Fahrenheit, so it's like 20, 25 Celsius. And then winter, it's only about 10 Celsius, or about 20 degrees Fahrenheit less than that. So that dips into like 40s, 50s are like, 5 to 10 Celsius in winter. It never really gets that hot. It never really gets that cold, except in extremes, of course. There's always some extreme day, but you know what I mean. But to them, 30 C is a heat wave. So they don't have any AC. No air conditioning in the country. Like none. Like, with very, very, very rare exceptions. So if you go in the middle of summer, um, it can be kind of stifling at times, especially if you go into like a big hotel or something where they don't have windows you can open, and like a high-rise hotel. They don't have air conditioning in those rooms, usually. Sometimes they do for like tourists or something, but very often you'll get in there and there's no open a window. You can't open a window. There's no air conditioning, and if it's 30 Celsius outside, it gets stifling in that building. Um, it gets uncomfortably hot. That rarely happens, but if it actually does get hot, they don't have like a way of dealing with it because they're not used to dealing with it. Now, in London itself, it's a lot brighter than the rest of the country. In most of the country, now I visited London. You don't know this, Gian. I did London for 4 weeks, and then I went up to the north of the country in Penrith for 1 week, and I came back into Cambridge in the east of the country for 1 week. I actually had plans for other things, but I didn't do that. And also, of course, I had a couple day trips out to other parts of the country. In most of the country, it is consistently, 15 Celsius and, 10, 15 Celsius, about, 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's only, you only really see like daylight 1 day a week, or, how do I say it, like blue skies, 1 or 2 days a week. The rest of the week, it's basically cloudy all day. Almost every day of the week, maybe like 5 or 6 days of the week, it will rain for 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes at most in the middle of the afternoon, like 2, 3 in the afternoon. It'll be kind of this light to moderate rain. You won't even get drenched. It'll be so short and so light. And then once that happens, like in the middle of the afternoon, the sky will open up. The clouds will mostly go away. You'll have, bright blue sky for the second half of the afternoon into the evening. And then like about 10 o'clock at most at midnight the next night, the clouds will come back, and in the morning it'll be gray and foggy and cloudy again. And you sort of rest and repeat that pretty much every day, 5, 6 days a week. And then the other 1 or 2 days a week, it'll be the same thing, but just no rain. It'll still be cloudy. It'll still open up late after. It'll probably be cloudy all day because you need to have the rain or to clear out the clouds. So like 1 or 2 days a week, it's just cloudy, gray, grim, kind of all day. But you get, a bright, sunny late afternoon. You get the stars come out in the early evening, and the rest of the day it's cloudy. But in London, that kind of weather usually only happens 2 or 3 days a week. The rest of the time, it probably doesn't rain, and it's probably like broken clouds. It never really has like truly bright blue day clouds on it. Those don't exist. Like almost never. Like 2 or 3 days a year. But the rest, in London, it's maybe like 4 or 5 days a week. It's sunny out, but it's like broken clouds, and only rains once or twice a week. It's just this little microclimate directly above London, and that's it. The rest of the country is all uniformly the same otherwise. Um, and it's definitely kind of humid and damp. It's not like a tropical humidity. It's like a damp, cold humidity. It feels like it's moldering everything around you or something. I don't know, it feels like a mold everywhere. And so it feels colder than a normal temperature. Normal temperature is like 60 degrees Fahrenheit or like 15 Celsius, but it definitely feels a good 10 to 20 degrees colder constantly because it's overcast. There's no sunlight. Okay, it's damp. It's windy, especially near the coasts. And it's just like this blowing wet wind all the time. And that also makes it very difficult to do laundry because they don't have they don't have clothes dryers in that country because they're paranoid about energy bills. The energy bills are through the roof. They can't pay for them, so they have a washer, but they don't have a dryer. Almost never. And if they do have a dryer, it's this like super efficient, energy efficient dryer, which doesn't really dry much of anything. It's a waste of money in my opinion. Don't even bother. And so you have to hang dry your clothes outside. But because there's no sunlight and because it rains every day, it takes forever to air dry your clothing, like literally all day. You have to put it out in the morning, and by the end of the day, it might be mostly kind of dry. But because it rains every day, you have to be home that day when you do laundry because it will rain on your clothing sometime during the day. It will, and you'll ruin the whole purpose of trying to dry your clothes. To be honest, um, and because the air is so damp, it just doesn't dry out. Okay, it just doesn't. Nothing dries out in the country. Um, and so I had experience with all that, which we'll get to much later in this series. Um, but in London, you can dry things out. They don't have dryers, but at least it's sunny enough that you can dry things out. In the rest of the country, I don't know how they do it personally. They must have like 1 day a week or 2 days a week that they have like laundry day. Like you stay home all day just to do laundry, and you gotta stay home because when it rains that day, you gotta be home, right, to pull everything off the drop clothesline. And 15 minutes later, the rain is over. You put it back, or you put it back there again. I don't know. It was very weird. Also, you can't really dry things indoors very well because most of the country, because it is cold, it's damp, and all that kind of stuff, they have tiny little windows. They have like very few and very small windows in their place. And it's very difficult to just put stuff into a window that faces south or east or something. Yeah. By the end of my trip, I had like wet, soggy, disgusting clothing because I couldn't dry it out properly. Whatever. So we'll get to that later. But that was one of my experiences. Um, But that's kind of the weather. It never really gets cold. It never really gets warm. It's always overcast. It's always damp. It's the only way I can describe it. Um, and and it rains. It does rain every single day, but not like all day. Literally like 5-10 minutes in the middle of the afternoon, and it's over before it begins. And, so that's basically constant weather throughout the country. Yes, yes. I did eat some Indian food, especially um what's it called? Salisbury. It's the Shah Jahanna near the Salisbury train station is absolutely recommended if you ever go over there. It's a kind of fancy Indian restaurant, but it is freaking fantastic. I did eat a little bit elsewhere. Um, there wasn't so much Indian food where I was staying. In London, where I was staying, was kind of like a Turkish neighborhood, so I ended up eating a lot of Turkish food. um, for the most part. Yeah, those are too energy intensive, Jan. They can't have those. Like I literally, my one of my hosts had one of those energy efficient, worthless dryers, and I literally paid her like 200 pounds. I had to like keep on bribing her more and more. It was like 200 pounds just to use it, which is like $200. She wouldn't do it for 100. She said it would be the energy bill would be too much. So you couldn't do that. She couldn't do that. Finally, it was like 200. She do one load. It was crazy. Um, Welcome back, Hala. Um, because otherwise I would literally have no dry clothes. And it only kind of makes your clothes go from like sopping wet to like very damp. It doesn't really dry your clothes. Um, and even that was 200 pounds. Um, so, um, so anyway, this is the train, similar to where we're going to go later. Greater Anglia. So at the time I was doing this, the UK had multiple companies running different like concessions to run the various trains in the country. Like different routes would be run by different companies, but it was within this kind of like national scheme of whatever. Um, so Greater Anglia is one of them that obviously went kind of like the east. Um, Now in the past couple of years, they've begun to renationalize the system. I think it's technically kind of under the name of various private companies, but it's not really private companies anymore. Yeah, whatever. But Greater Anglia is one of those operating companies. You had to buy tickets, of course, from the actual operating company. Okay, you could look up schedules for all of them. Oh, I want to go from A to B or whatever. But then you actually have to go to the website of the actual operating company itself and actually. Now, the way I rode around was on a Britrail pass. So Britrail pass you buy in advance, and it gives you access to anywhere in the country. You can take any train anywhere in the country you want, any number of trains in a day, for 8 days out of 30 days. So you have a 30-day period once you activate your pass, and you can activate for 8 separate days. And while you have that 24-hour period when the pass is active for that day, you can take any train anywhere in the country, any number of trains, any directions, anywhere. And I mostly traveled around like that. Once I left London, of course. Um, and it's really a good deal. It really is a good deal to get the Brit Pass if you go to that country or any country really. If you ever go to a country that has a good rail system, if you get the rail pass, it's almost always going to like save you money, and it's very convenient. You literally just have a pass. You don't have to buy a ticket for the train you're going. Normally, when you buy a train ticket, it has to be for like that train at that time of day on that date for a certain seat for a certain right. It has to be this and that and that and that right. And if you miss that, tough, right? You lose your ticket. Um, they only refund you if you cancel in advance or if they have to reschedule because of their problems. If you miss it, you're at 100 pounds or something. Right? That's your problem. Whereas if you Britrail pass, you literally just have a pass for the day. You can walk on any train in the country, on any platform, anywhere. Just walk on. Okay, just walk on the train. You show your little Britrail pass to the conductor, and you're on that train. Right? You can walk onto any seat, on any train, on any platform, at any station, in any part of the country, anywhere. Okay, very easy. Um, so I recommend you get one of those rail passes if you're in a country like this. Um, I did not exactly see how it was, Cala. I mean, I'm in London and there's not a lot of gas stations downtown. Um, I mean, it's obviously a lot more than it is in the US. Yes, we're going to get to there eventually, Jan. Right now we're in the city, and we're going to get to the countryside later on, especially in our day trips later. So literally, I would just like walk on there. You scan your Britnell pass, and you walk on a train, and you're there, right? Which is especially useful because the weather is so unreliable there. If you want to arrive at some day trip to go out to Dover or Cambridge or Salisbury or something, you don't know what the weather's going to be almost like tomorrow, right? You try to get there on non-rain day, but you can't predict that. So you only can get like a weather window a day or two in advance. But it's hard to get a train ticket a day or two in advance. Oftentimes they're just sold out. Um, so in trying to like plan like a day trip out of London, it's much easier to use a rail pass than it is a ticket because the ticket is only good that day. um, I think Marmite is Australian jam. Yeah, that's what I thought too, Calla. Anyway, so now we're walking around the area of St. Pancras. This is an interesting little alleyway in the back. You just barely wide enough to walk down. I thought it was pretty cool. That says like George Villiers. Hmm. And another little alley. What does that say? Il Molino sandwiches. Take away and eat in. So it's not take out, it's take away over there. Here's the walkie talkie building in the background, which famously melted a Jaguar car. And another street scene. Here's the HMS Belfast, which we had visited earlier. You can see about that in a previous stream, Gian. And the Tower Bridge. The reason why is a walkway for Gian. On the top there is it was built during the Victorian era, and the middle part is a drawbridge to allow ships through. And and whenever they wanted to allow a ship through, they didn't want to interrupt at least pedestrian traffic because this was like only the second bridge ever built over the Thames after the London Bridge. So it was very, very crowded. They don't want to disrupt traffic every time a ship came through. So what happened was, you would go on the left side of the bridge, or the right side of the bridge. There would be elevators. They just invented like elevators this time. You go up the tower, take pedestrians over one side of the tower. You'd walk the walkway while the drawbridge was up. You take a elevator down the other tower, and you could continue to walk along that way. Um, Now, these days, you can't do that anymore, of course. The drawbridge is very rarely, if ever, open. This isn't ship traffic anymore to warrant that. And the walkway's closed, the elevators don't work, and all that kind of stuff. But that's the way it used to work when it was built in the 19th century. Yes, the River Thames, Gianna. That is the River Thames. Fun fact is that the name Thames, most rivers in England, at least, have Celtic names. Basically, they're usually pretty obviously a Celtic name. But the Thames has no meaning in Gaelic or in Celtic language, and it's believed it may be a pre-Celtic remnant name from whoever preceded the Celts into England at one point. Um, it's yeah, as the most important river in the country, it actually has like a pre-Celtic name. So we know literally nothing about the people who gave it that name and what they meant by it. So, little fun fact there. Um, this is probably from the London Bridge, by the way. So here's a street scene. I was using like a mobile SIM card in my phone at that time on this trip. I don't terribly recommend them. They're kind of shitty. In London, they're fine. Once you go into the countryside, they're not fine. Um, they're not so great coverage. But they're everywhere. So this is probably in Suffolk, which is like the south side of downtown. Some more street scenes. The walkie-talkie building in the background. And this was like there was some sort of bird over there I could not recognize it, but it was all black and like a white belly. I saw a lot of them over there, but there's none on this side of the Atlantic. So I saw this building, which is pretty interesting. It's like they cut a slice out of it. There's a glass on the inside, but then there's this slice cut out on it. There's this interesting bench with the mosaics in like a back neighborhood in Suffolk. There's the Shard, which is near the London Bridge train slash underground slash station slash bus depot, which is immediately on the other side of the London Bridge from where I am. Um, Another typical street scene in Suffolk with the Shard in the background, the Workman Cafe. And then let's see. This might be the Lambeth Bridge or something like that. I forget exactly. There's like 14 bridges in London these days, so I cannot remember them all. So now we're coming to the various bridges. That's the Old Bailey in the background. That's like the central courthouse of London. And then we have Stephen Seagull looking over a pier. And this day, I think I went over a bunch of different bridges. So there's the City of London in the background with the walkie-talkie building. And I think that is, or that's not, no. Okay, so that's the bridge we just saw. There's St. Paul's Cathedral, otherwise known as the Eastminster. You ever heard of Westminster in London? Well, that's the Eastminster. A minster is almost like a main or large church. Um, just like a parish church, and there's a minster church, and there's like a cathedral in like hierarchy of churches. And so the Westminster, which is today the city of Westminster, which is one of the 32 boroughs in Greater London, not to be confused with the city of London. Um, Westminster was originally a minster, a large central church that was outside of the original city walls of London, but in this kind of like area that was actually settled, I think, by the Saxons or somebody or something like that. The Saxons obviously invaded England, 1,500 years ago, and they tried to take London, but the Londoners were able to, defend themselves, and so the Saxons set up shop basically just outside the city walls, just to the west of the city of London. And they set up like a little trading post, so if they can't conquer the Londoners, they would trade with them. Um, and that became Westminster, basically. And a little town that grew up around there eventually became a church, and that became Westminster. And then the Eastminster, which was in the city limits, is what is now called St. Paul's. And then, of course, when William the Conqueror came around, he tried to conquer London, couldn't breach the walls, couldn't conquer London. He made a deal with them that he would not attack them, but in return they would crown him king instead of Harold Hadraga, where it was. And he built to keep track of the Londoners. He also agreed not to build any royal residence or any fortification within the city limits. So then he built the Tower of London just to the east of the city. So the Tower of London was this Norman settlement fortification just to the east of city limits. Westminster was a Saxon trading post fortification, whatever it was, just to the west of the city limits, and the city proper is in between them. And it's where East Westminster and all that comes from. Yes, it's very pretty, this part. St. Paul's is very striking and impressive up in person. Oh, and on the left side there, if you look to the left, that is the Millennium Bridge. I'll go over there. We're about to be there in a moment, but this is the latest bridge built in a little after around the year 2000, I think. That's the Millennium Bridge. It's a pedestrian-only bridge, and we're about to get there soon. And also, for reference, you can see here is you see the City of London School. So London consists of two parts. There's the City of London, or the Square Mile, which is the original Roman city of Londinium, which is approximately 1.25 square miles. That's the name. Which sits at the center. And then London Bridge connects that to Southwark on the south bank of the Thames. Um, and that's the City of London. Then surrounding that are the 32 boroughs, including Westminster and Southwark, of Greater London, which is what most people call London. These two are distinct legal entities. Okay, they have different rights, they have different privileges, they have different relationships to the crown, they have distinct fire departments and police departments and courts and school systems and everything. Okay, even to some extent different laws. Um, so there's a distinction between the City of London and Greater London, or just normal London. Um, the City of London is also sometimes called the Corporation of London or the Corporation of the City of London. Okay, all names for the same thing. They have their own mayors, they have their own city council. Everything is distinct. Um, they cooperate, they coordinate, but legally they're different things. Okay, and then there's like the London Metropolitan Police, which is I think the bigger police department, and then the city itself has its own other police department, I forget what it's called, but whatever. So you'll see two different police departments within the city, depending on where you are. And here's the Millennium Bridge, and then I forget the next bridge over there, behind that, but it's a pedestrian-only bridge built during the Millennium. This, when it was originally built, had some problems. I think it was like swaying in the wind or something. Had some sort of resonance problem, and it was actually making people sick. It would like sway a lot in heavy winds and all this. And they eventually, after a couple of years, managed to fix it. But it was like they had to close it down and all this kind of stuff. It was built like to celebrate the millennium, but then people couldn't walk on it. Um, Eventually they fixed it, but yeah, that was the whole thing at one point. Um, and this, so then I took the Uber Uber boat. So Uber runs a ferry service of sorts. Um, Pardon the noise. That's the plowing of the snow outside. So Uber runs a boat, a sort of a ferry boat that runs down the Thames, pretty much from one side of the city to the other, and gets off various places. But it's mostly used by tourists as a kind of sightseeing boat. Um, I don't know too many locals that use it. Yeah, it's kind of expensive. It's almost $20 to go from one side of the city to the other. You pay it based on distance, so it might be as little as like $5. If you go short distance, but if you go all the way, literally from one side to the other, it could be like $20. Um, so But it is a good way if you want to walk around to see a lot of the places along the riverbank, like all the main tourist sites, because it has nice big windows and all that. This is the Uber uh, boat, and you can see the Tower Bridge in the background and the HMS Belfast. We're going just past that. We also have the London Rose, which is another tour boat, and you can see um, uh, the big bus London tour bus going over the bridge on one side, and the red double decker city buses on the other side. You guys can hear me fine? Okay, that's good, Jim. Thank you, Calla. And I took this boat like halfway out, basically. I was originally going to actually got tickets to go like all the way from the middle of town to one side and then all the way to the other side. But eventually, the day got too long. I decided to quit that. I basically went on a $10 trip for by $30 with tickets. But and I ended up all the way on the east side of town in a place called Bromsley, the borough of Bromsley, which is pretty far out there. These big kind of wave catcher things, or they kind of like tide arresters in the middle of the Thames that prevent the Thames from flooding in high tide. And the boat actually goes past those, and they look very ominously huge. Coming out. I didn't get a picture, I don't think, but coming out of the river, and you keep on going. Like you're leaving the gates of the city and keep on going because there's more London and there's more London, and eventually you end up in a place that looks like it's in the middle of the countryside, but it's technically within city limits. And eventually they get off and they let you off in this place which there's nothing, there's just like industrial estates and there's factories and there's no people around. So you get off, you go to this little pier, you go through some factory back lots, and eventually you end up on a road and you catch a bus. It's like a bus stop. There's not a whole lot out there. You're still within city limits, but there's not a lot out there. And then you take a bus, and that takes you into Stratford. And then from there, that's like the actual town. And then from the borough of Stratford, then you can take another bus into town. So, but actually, the underground goes all the way out to Romsley. There is like an underground station out there. And what, honest to God, looks like the countryside meets factories. So, um, oh, these things, these are the gates. Like you're leaving the gates of the city. It was crazy. Like these things. These things, they actually have like giant doors that come out of the water and can hold back the tide so the city doesn't flood. It was built by like a Dutch company, and beyond this point, there are like giant apartment blocks you can see on the right there, but they're out in the middle of nowhere. There's no shops. There's no city. There's nothing. There's just people living in that middle. Yeah, these big towers in the middle of nowhere. But there's also like these big container terminals and oil terminals. You can do this big. Um, I think it was a big ship of some kind, like a cargo ship or an oil tanker or something. And it's just docked by obviously the riverbank. But there's obviously none of that beyond these gate things. Well, once you pass the gates, you're in a different part of town, and you're still within city limits. Um, and they have very similar gate kind of technology, I think, in Venice, Italy, because that city is flooding as well. And it's a gigantic, 1,000-foot long ships. I think this was like a bulk carrier, probably carrying iron ore or something like that. But it was just, it's huge, absolutely gigantic. Um, Passing that by. It, and there's these giant office blocks that are under construction, or tower blocks. And I have no idea who's going to live out here because there's nothing out there. There's no way to get out there. There's no. Feels like one of those Chinese ghost cities where they build gigantic apartment towers in the middle of Inner Mongolia or whatever. It felt like that. And here's our pier that take us out in the middle of nowhere. This is officially the end of the line. Couldn't go any further. No more City of London after that. And then, oops. And then here is the square, kind of in the middle of Stratford. Stratford Station. You have like the train station with one of the old locomotives, and I caught a bus from here going back in town. Um, but you took a bus to get out here because you're still 15, 20 miles out of town in Bromsley, and then you took another bus from here into town. So I find this interesting. I like the lady and her dress and the old locomotive with the big modern building behind it and all that. This area was heavily destroyed during the Blitz back in the day, so it's very modern architecture. Very industrial and therefore heavily targeted during the Blitz. And here is the Regent's Canal near where I was staying. I don't know if Jan knows this, but so I was staying in Airbnb, which was in a flat, an apartment block. One side of which was the Regent's Canal, the other side of which was the Suleymaniye, the Turkish mosque. The third side was the A10, like this main road, the Ermine Road that the Romans originally built, going from London Bridge to York, which has many names with London. It starts off as like Bishopsgate Road, because actually Bishopsgate within the city of London. And then it goes by a whole bunch of things and it becomes like Shoreditch High Street and this street and that street. It becomes Kingsland Road where I was at, and it becomes a different street, different street, different street until you leave town, and just the A10 of that, and it goes to Cambridge and off to York. So that's the third side, and then the fourth side of the building was the overground, and the overground is um, the converted commercial rail lines in the city. They're converted to passenger rail. So you have the underground, the London Tube, but then during like the 70s, 80s, a lot of the industrial commercial railroads in the city shut down when all the factories went away. And they went disused, and then the city bought them out. The city of London bought them out and reused them as a kind of overground version of the underground. And the overground system, the underground system don't fully integrate. It's not like one train can operate either way. They're totally different train systems, totally different even gauges of I don't know. But it's a different system, but they are connected to each other. Like you can transfer from one system to the other at certain stations and so on. It uses the same ticketing system. It's technically a different system. And so one of those commercial lines, which is now the overground, ran directly behind our building because our building was originally it's like a converted warehouse. Where I was staying was like originally basically a warehouse district, industrial area. And then once all the factories go away, then it gets converted into loft apartments. And so the train tracks run directly behind our building. Luckily, I was on the street side of the building, which is a lot quieter. It's by the fact it's a very busy street. It's actually pretty quiet. Because if you were on the back side of the building, your apartment, your windows, whatever, directly overlooking the train tracks. And those train tracks are running 24/7. So, every 10, 15 minutes throughout the night, you get this train trundle past you at all hours, the day and night. And you would not want those units. Trust me. Um, and you can vaguely hear them if you're in the front of the building like I was, but it wouldn't wake you up. I don't think you have to have really, really good sound insulation not to be woken up on those trains if you live in the back of the building, I believe. So that's that. So anyway, this is the Regent's Canal, which is the north side of my building. And there's a little towpath on one side you can walk down. Be a little careful when you walk down that towpath, though. There's a lot of cyclists. It's very narrow, and a cyclist will, zoom past you at 15 miles an hour down a 4-foot wide path. So you have to be a little careful with that. But they try to avoid you, but it's very narrow. There's no railing, so you can take a drink if you're not careful. And there's always houseboats. So there's a whole houseboat culture in England that people, when they retire, rather than have a retirement house, they'll have a retirement houseboat. And they'll move around the country to see different parts of the country or whatever, almost like a camper. But because England has this very extensive network of canals that go absolutely everywhere in the country, you can easily navigate all throughout the interior of the country without going on the coast, just via the canals, and live off your little houseboat. You can retire that way. So there's some houseboats in there, and some trendy restaurants, as you can see on the left. And the Regent's Canal is also, as you can see here, very popular tourists. Very touristy area. There's probably almost all tourists that you can see in there. And you got a trendy restaurant over here. Probably cost an arm and a leg to eat there. So, anybody have any questions? This is the I think, August 20th, 2022. Now, this was unusually nice weather, Jan. Normally, it's gray and grim, and yeah, it'd be very interesting to think about that, Jan. They're very small, obviously. They're like 200 square feet or something. But when you go past them, you look in one of the little windows. There's very little room in them. There's not a lot of space. But welcome, Nemo. Oh, that's okay, Nemo. Nice to show up. You missed day one, but we get the other days. So now we will go over to the 21st, unless somebody has some questions. So this day, if I remember correctly, um, I took the overground to let me think where I went to. What was it called again? Let me look. This place is called. Uh, da, 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 uh, Let me just transfer this over. Uh, so this is the west part of town. So I'm staying over here at this little heart in near Haggerston. And you can go down to here to the city of London, the center. And you got Westminster to the west, and Whitechapel and Tower Hamlets on the east side of town. What was this place called again? I'm blanking out. It was a train station. I can't remember what it's called. Near Battersea, but it's not Battersea. Uh, oh yes, Clapham Junction. That's it. Clapham Junction. You catch some disease here. That's what I always thought. Anyway, we went to Clapham Junction. I forget why exactly, but um, I remember it was kind of busy and it reminded me of like Queens Borough Plaza in New York, where like the tracks go underneath this main. They're like underneath the station, so then you have to go up the steps to the actual platform which overlooks the tracks, and then you go from the street from there in a very busy area. Um, yes, mine too now. Okay, Gian. Um, I'm glad you found a room, Gian. So, so I went to Clapham Junction, and then let's go back here for a minute. And but from Clapham Junction, which is there, we went to Battersea, which we're about to see in a moment. Which is often a place I heard about. So, and here's Battersea. Well, it's Battersea Park, and it's Battersea uh Cemetery. Okay, Clapham. Come. Is this the no? Oh, here's the cemetery. Yes, this is probably where it is. Okay. So yeah, we took a train from here to where we are in the heart, kind of like that. And so this is Battersea Cemetery, and there are some famous graves in here. I don't remember exactly what they were. It's a couple years ago, but um, and nobody in this particular cemetery, unlike the one I encountered in Tottenham, where I encountered a guy walking his dog, and he was looking at me very furtively at times, like I was the only person there with his dog. Like his dog was about to take a shit, and he didn't want anybody to see his dog take a shit in the grave, so he didn't want me around. But whatever, dude. Um, so here is the same grave at ground level. There's a little trash, unfortunately, on the ground, but there's some nice trees. a heavily manicured tree. Here's the chapel in the center. Like there's a small hill at the center of the cemetery. Thank you, Nemo. That will be a future cemetery, Cal. You will see. Not this one, though. Probably a lot of dead limbs, Nemo. It was probably going to endanger all the nearby graves. I think it's going to fall down. But yeah, it was pretty dramatic. Like, yeah. If it's going to be that much, why not just chop down the whole tree? But I found it interesting he had like a tree that looked that dead. Like it was just dismembered and dead amongst all the gravestones. Like it was symbolic or something. Oh, terrible, Jan. I've heard of those. At least you have a place to stay, Jan. Um, I do find it interesting that they would have all this very elaborate architecture. Looks like there's probably like a piece of wood here. Maybe there was a bell or something, but it's very elaborate architecture for a cemetery. Very Victorian. It reminds me of Greenwood in Brooklyn. Yeah, those are don't look them up, Nemo. Don't look them up. Anyway, so here's intersection in Clapham. So from this point onward, we're going. You can see the map again. We are going from where were we again? From Battersea in this area, and I was going to go down to Clapham Common, which you can see, hopefully down here, and then oh, and then I went over to Brixton. I visited Brixton, which I could recommend going over there, and I headed back down Brixton Road into Walworth and this area. Now this area is sort of like it's called Elephant Castle. It's a very busy area just to the south of Suffolk. So here's Suffolk and then to Elephant Castle. So that's what we're going to do today. So I found this interesting. Some interesting graffiti on top. Nemo. That is truly disgusting, Jan. And then we have some interesting street art next to a construction site. I think there's a Battersea Aquarium nearby. So And now we are approaching Brixton. And there's the overground again. Unfortunately, I got my hand in it, but all right. And then in Brixton, there is this like food court market area. And this is one interesting staircase that leads up to there. Or is this the train station? And there's this interesting building. It's a bunch of main commercial streets in central Brixton. Kind of interesting. Electric Lane, Brixton, London. And this is what they call a circus. I think it is Brixton Circus. So a circus is a building built in, it's a series of buildings actually, but all in like a row, but built into a kind of an arc like this. So it forms a kind of circular road. And it can be on the outside of a like a roundabout or a city square, or it can just be for its own sake. Um, and they have, yeah. Um, so think like Piccadilly Circus is similar to this. Nope, never heard of it. GM? Probably is, Nima. Probably is. Oh, that's interesting, Nima. I could look that up, GM. So they had some interesting mural here. Brixton Village. So let's look that up. Earl's Court, London. So here's Earl's Court. So that's kind of northwest of Chelsea, south of Kensington, if you can see that. That looks interesting. I didn't get here. Since I was staying in the east side of town, East End, I didn't get much to the West End for the most part. So I didn't see this part of town very much. So here's like the food court area. Steal of the day. Order any pizza. equals free glass of Prosecco. Okay. Carniceria Los Andes. So it's like Ecuadorian maybe? Or it could be Peruvian or something. I remember when I got here, there was a very good, what they call Asian in that part of the country world market. I got like a bunch of nice teas and like Middle Eastern treats and all this kind of stuff. Um, you go into like this little doorway and there's this dark rows and rows and rows, and you have to kind of go in the back and just sort through stuff. But like lots and lots of imported foods and uh, drinks, and yeah. So if you like Middle Eastern food, that was the place. I like filled a whole bunch of bags with stuff I used on the Miranda trip. This is really good tea I got. I think I got like a peach tea and uh a jasmine tea. Really good. In like these very old school bags, tea bags. Um, looks like something bagged in India or something. And yeah, a whole bunch of right, imports were very good. But that was one of the side alleys of this area. I remember that. Jalisco, Brixton. Exactly, Nemo. Oh yes, there's also the places around here too. I actually went to the original Xing Fu Tao in what it's called in Flushing, New York. I've been there a few times. That's at least in the U.S. the original bubble tea location, like the original, not just the original chain, but the original location of the original chain. Um, and then we're leaving the little downtown area. Um, and this is an interesting little park in a residential neighborhood. A lot of Bobs in this park. They're holding a Bob party. Bob is holding a party with all his other Bobs and Bobettes right in Brixton. You must, Ema, you must. A back alley of Brixton. And I found this little park, which is nice in the area. So very beautiful light coming through this tree in the afternoon. Oh, really, Kella? Tamara, a leader. Okay. Interesting, Kella. Borough Junction. I think it's Borough. Or is it Highborough Junction? Pardon me. Highborough Junction. Not to be confused with Borough. Is it Borough Junction or no? I'm thinking something else. And I found this interesting. Somebody has some cactus in their window. In a little round window, they have cactus. I don't know what that's about. But, and Brixton definitely is a pretty touristy area these days. Now we're heading downtown. If you can see the Shard, you are approaching Suffolk. And Co-op, as you can see on the left here, is a pharmacy chain. I went into one of those on my trip. I won't say why, but um, fancy Victorian building, double-decker bus, rich guy in a sports car, lots of pedestrian traffic. We're very London right now. And the Blue Man Group was ascending this building. I'm not sure what they were doing, but at the Maya house. And then we come into Suffolk and the Shard. And this will take us back home because there's the bus depot below. All right. If anybody has any questions, otherwise we'll move on to the next day. That's interesting, Nima. Does that include the um, volcano? Here's something interesting. It looks like there's almost okay. It's like an anti-nuclear sign, new leaf, and this is maybe is this Japanese writing? I'm not sure. Katagawa or whatever. Are we trying to give like a hinting at something here? Hmm. Okay, nobody seems to have any questions, so I shall move on. So here was the Museum of the Home, which was just down the street from where I'm living, and you can see the overground and the background. This was a museum. Originally, the location was almost like a retirement house, very early retirement house that was set up in the 17th century, like 1680s or something, by a prominent merchant in the area. And so like um, if you're a widow and you became indigent, you couldn't um, pay for your living anymore, and you had no relatives, you could apply to this place to live out the remainder of your days, kind of thing. You get a room, or maybe you have to share a room, but it was basically set up like an elder home by the 18th century. It was entirely privately funded, right down until like the 20th century, in fact. Um, and eventually it fell out of use, and now it's like a museum dedicated towards really a lot of things in the area, like the like Shoreditch, like local Shoreditch history, and this particular merchant who set up this particular place, and the nature, I think, of like the silver lead trade or something which he was engaged in, and how that affected the area, and the copper merchant or something like that. I forget. Um, it was partly to him, it was partly this, and it's a little bit of everything. Okay. Um, but it was only open like for 2 or 3 hours a day for like 2 days a week, and I never quite caught the right day that you had to be there for to be open. He's always doing something else that day or going somewhere else. There's just always There's a lot of little museums like that in London, which you have to be there just the right day of the week. Um, and so, but you can look into the courtyard, right, and see this. That's interesting, Nemo. So here's St. Pancras from the outside, because it's very pretty. It's very Victorian. Um, and the vault you see on the right is the main train tracks, and then there's like another station to the right behind all this, perpendicular to it, which is the Eurostar in a more modern building, which is just sort of jammed onto the back of this thing. I think originally the train tracks were open to the elements, like they were not enclosed, and they put the vaulting in later, maybe in like the early 20th century or something. But it was originally open. Just that building, like the actual station, was enclosed, but not the actual tracks. And then so that's St. Pancras, and this I think is this is King's Cross from the front. So I was speaking before about St. Pancras has the yellow bricks, and I was mistaken. It was actually, or was it? Oh, well, it's the other way around. I get these stations so confused. So this the square outside of this public square outside is very very busy, and this is King's Cross. Very 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 busy area. Lots of people milling around, coming and going. There's Ubers everywhere. There's taxis everywhere. There's buses everywhere. There's people coming in and out of the tube. Um, on these escalators, and this is the train station itself. And King's Cross Station goes north, basically, actually like northeast. So if you're going to like Cambridge or York or something like that, you take this. If you're going to like Canterbury or Points East or Dover or something like that, you would go in St. Pancras. And then if you're going kind of northwest, you would take Euston Station. And it's spelled like Houston, like the city in Texas, but it's locally pronounced Houston, not an S. There's no H sound. The H is dropped. And that's like a mile down the road from here, and that will take you basically um, into like the northwest of England, to like it goes to Liverpool, and eventually off to like um, I'm going to eventually end up in Penrith, going that way, and to what is it, Glasgow in Scotland. Whereas this goes up the east side of England and up in Scotland. So again, Cambridge, York, and eventually up into um, Edinburgh, Scotland, basically. And this is inside the lobby of the British Library. It's like the National Library of the country. And it's like a bunch of, you can see there's a whole bunch of layers going up. You can take a step, so you can take those escalators. And it's a whole bunch of layers below ground, as you can see on the escalators on the left. Um, and it's very tall in that sense. And when I was there that day, they had a bunch of interesting books, but mostly they had two of the four remaining copies of the Magna Carta on display. I actually saw the third copy when I was in Salisbury later on, and the fourth copy is in York. But two of the copies were here in the British Library, and that was a very interesting exhibit. I would definitely recommend, if you get a chance, everybody should read the Magna Carta. It's pretty readable. It's a little bit archaic language, but it's pretty readable. And you have to kind of read between the lines a little bit. It's obviously medieval language, but you can understand it. It's very sort of flowery. How do you say it? Like it's a little legalese sometimes, but if you understand what they're talking about and you kind of read between the lines, it is fascinating. It is almost shockingly interesting read. I'll put it that way. Um, you can see why King John rejected it very shortly after signing it. Like no king would sign this document. It is interesting. I'll leave it at that because you could read like they had the text on the wall, as well as the actual two copies in display cases. But yeah, that was an interesting document. You should read it. Um, that's interesting, Jim. I would say most days are Nemo. Now, sunny in England usually means like broken clouds, like you can see blue sky. Doesn't mean you actually have totally blue sky, but it's so like I would say 4 or 5 days a week in London. Now, in the rest of the country, it's probably only like 1 or 2 days a week, and probably more like one. Um, the rest of the day, as I said in the past, it's basically cloudy all day until about mid afternoon, and then about 4, 5, 6 days a week, you'll have a little bit of rain in like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Very brief, very short, very not very intense. And then after rain clears, the sky opens up, relatively speaking, and most half the clouds part, and you get a nice bright sunny afternoon until dusk. You get to see the stars in the evening until maybe 10 o'clock at night, and then the clouds come back, and it'll be cloudy in the morning again. Um, and it's like that pretty much every day of the week, except 1 or 2 days a week in most country. And then it's exactly that same weather, summer or winter. It's just that the summer is like 20 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the winter. It's like a mild temperature difference, but the actual weather is not different. It rarely it's rarely really hot, and it rarely snows. Maybe it's a little snow a little bit in like depth of winter, especially if you're in the west country where it's a colder, or if you're especially in like the Scots Highlands or something. But for most of the country, it might snow 1 or 2 days a year at best, and it's a very light snow at that. And most of the time, it's rainy, and it's within a very narrow temperature range, and the weather honestly looks exactly the same in summer and winter. There are no dramatic. I'm sure they will insist there is, but in my understanding, there is no dramatic change in the weather based on the season. It's one season. So it's almost like it's tropical in that sense. So it's one season all year round. Just variations on that season rather than different seasons. Thank you, Kayla. But yeah, you should guys definitely take a gander at the Magna Carta. It is quite a provocative document to read. And you can read it in 15 minutes. I mean, it's not that long. But it is, yeah, it's interesting language. Um, it's not a tepid document, not at all. Um, especially if you read between the lines and you try to like understand what they're getting at. They're not quite saying some things directly, but you think, oh, oh wow. Um, yeah. Most kings are never going to sign that document. No. Um. Anyway, so this is what King's Cross looks like on the inside. It's this ultra modern thing. It was heavily damaged during the war, and so they rebuilt it. And then there's the proverbial Greg's. So Greg's is almost like um, Dunkin' Donuts or something similar to that. It's a little bit more than just a Starbucks. It's actually like they actually have like breakfast food in addition to coffee, but it is like the staple national like breakfast cafe chain in the country. Like everybody goes to Greg's, or you know what kind of person you're dealing with who goes to Greg's versus Costa Coffee or something. It's one of those. It is a national institution. So I definitely went to Greg's a couple times. Um, and one thing about Greg's, because it is so popular, you really got to get there early sometimes because they will just run out of stock. They'll have like no food or anything. They'll have no sandwiches or bagels or whatever. It'll be mostly empty if you get too late. If you get there like 9 a.m., they open at 7 typically. So if you get there by 9, it's mostly empty. There's nothing on the shelves. They have coffee, but they don't have. Yeah, get there early. That's how popular they are. And there's still a line around the block a lot of times. Um, so this is what it looks like on the inside. And Waitrose, which you can see in the lower left-hand corner there, is like a convenience store chain. You almost like it's like going to CVS but without the drugstore. It was very pretty in there. Yes, those are pretty good, Jan. But you got to get there before 9. They'll all be gone. And this is so this is the back end, the modern part, the Eurostar part of St. Pancras, and they're building more of it. um, but you can walk all the way around. It's like a pedestrian walkway all around. But this guy here, you can see in the foreground here with his big roller bag, he's probably going to Europe or he's coming from Europe. But this is the Eurostar train hallway, basically. And they're building more of it. In spite of the fact that we have Brexit and supposedly, I don't know, divorced from Europe, but not really. Um, so if anybody has any questions before I move on. Very good, Jan. So the next day, I went back to Suddock and encountered this used, kind of expensive bookstore. They had like a lot of interesting old used books. I was specifically looking for a Geiger, like an original HR Geiger, which is hard to find a good one that's like cheap. So I was going to look for that there. I was told, I think this particular shop might have had, I forget where I learned this, might have had a Geiger. Specifically his, I think it's HR Geiger's New York, which is one of the hardest ones to find. Um, and that's very hard, especially if you want to pay like less than $500. So I've always been interested in that particular book. I have a library near me that has some of his other stuff, like the Necronomicon, but not the New York. Um, so I was told this is one of the reasons why I went to the UK actually is this particular bookshop might have had that particular book, but you had to look. They don't know where it is on the shelf. You just have to check all the shelves one by one. And so I looked at all the shelves, I didn't find it, and so I found a whole bunch of other interesting books. They're all very expensive, typically like 50, 100, $200. Um, limited edition or art books or something like that. Um, I took a couple pictures of some of the books, which I found interesting. Um, so no Geiger, but so there's this one. So this one, I this is these pictures I got are only a handful of what this book was. Like this is just some of the more bizarre ones. But it was a whole book just like this. Um, and I wish I remember who the I took a picture of like the cover so I could figure out who the author was, but yeah. But I didn't do that, so. And the pyramids in the background. This is strange stuff. But when you're looking at for Geiger, this is what you come up with instead. This was in Suddock. This guy, whoever it was, he liked springs. Like everything was like a spring, like this. Especially that narrowed down to a point. This was a very big theme in the whole book. Yes, Jan, I liked it too. I could afford it. It's like a $300 book. I could not afford it, and I didn't have a lot of luggage. I think one backpack that had to go in the overhead compartment on the plane. So I don't know. I didn't have a lot of space in that bag, and to be honest, I don't know if it would survive being going through the airplane. So I'd buy it. It's very expensive, obviously, but so I'd get it. But it's very interesting to watch or browse through. And then there was this. I kind of joked that it looked like a sea mine. It was something that was floating in the Thames, and of course, um, Stephen the seagull is perched on there. And there they are. These floating things. I don't know what they're doing in the middle of Thames, but a big floating, metal floating thing. Okay, seed mines in the middle of the Thames. And then you have the city on the right with the walkie-talkie building and the Millennium Bridge, and then St. Paul's on the left. And there's that thing again, whatever that was. So I live near Yale University, GN, and they have well, they have several libraries part of their university, which are or at least were pre-COVID accessible to the public. You can get like a guest library card, and you can take a book off the shelf. You can't take it out, but I think they've seemingly changed their policies since COVID. But you used to be able to do that, and I used to be able to take out some Geiger books that way or look at them. Because they have like every book on planet Earth. They have like I forget what they're called again. They have like one of the library records for the U.S. Library of Congress. Um, which it's a tower, and it's about 14 stories tall. It's in the middle of the campus, and it's entirely a library. And I'm told it's 14 stories above ground and it's 14 stories below ground. Okay. Um, and it contains like 10 million books, and it's like a library record kind of thing. And if you have a card, you can gain access theoretically to all the books. Unfortunately, I think they changed their policies code for you can't really do that anymore. But that was interesting back then. Um, Otherwise, Geiger books are usually very expensive. You can get one, at least where I am, but yeah, it's going to be multi-$100. Um, it's not worth your time. Um, yes, Cal. I could look that up. Yeah, yeah, but that's the advantage of living next to an Ivy League university, just down the road from you. But yeah, it's supposedly it's gigantic. It's very large inside. I mean, it's not huge, but it's big. Okay, but supposedly it's as far below ground as it is above ground, and so they put their really really valuable books underground, to avoid damage or something. Um, and it's literally designed to preserve some kinds of books in case like of nuclear war or something. Like the entire country is wrecked in nuclear war. You're going to preserve a couple key historical books underground. And that's what it's designed to do. Um, they also have it's the Bernanke. I think it's the Bernanke Library, something like that. Then they also have a rare books library, which is another million books or something. And it looks like this giant glass cube. You walk into the cube, and they have all these books behind in shelves, but the shelves are behind glass. You can't touch the books, obviously. And it's all like their historical books or their rare books. And they have a whole bunch of very historical rare books, including famously the Voynich manuscript, which is one of this medieval manuscript, contains like a very mystery script. Nobody knows what it's written in, but it has all these weird drawings of plants and naked ladies and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, the Voynich manuscript is there, and you can request to see it. Um, ah, oh, I think they even have like one of the original copies of the Constitution or something, and other stuff. I don't know. They have a whole bunch of rare books there. Have you ever read Jorge Luis Borges, GM? I would not be surprised, Nemo. I would not be surprised. Okay, here's the Millennium Bridge again. We're gonna go over it. Bunch of tourists. It's almost entirely tourists going over this, but this is a very touristy area. And there's the Millennium Bridge with St. Paul's in the background. Bob is having a Bob party on the bridge this day. They're all enjoying the view and bopping along. As I said, this bridge, when it was first built around the year 2000, um, had swaying problems in the wind, and it was actually unsafe. And to fix it, it was built wrong. Here's Bob posing for a portrait. He flew across the Atlantic with me in order to hold a party on this bridge. You guys know the story of Bob, the pigeon? Here's Stephen the seagull um, taking a snooze amongst, well, something. I guess it's comfortable for him. Well, there's a story. Well, we have to back up for a moment. There is a theory out there that you can account for the behavior of electrons if you assume that every electron in the world, in the whole universe, is actually just one electron moving backwards in time. Okay? Every electron in the whole universe, in every atom, and every is actually just one electron, but it can be just one electron, but you have to assume it's moving backwards in time. Okay? So there's a theory that every pigeon in the world is just one pigeon who moves around so quickly it makes you think there's multiple pigeons in the world, and there's pigeons everywhere in the world, in every city in the world. But it's really just one pigeon, and his name is Bob. Okay, this one pigeon moves backwards in time, which allows him to be everywhere in the world simultaneously. He gives the illusion of being everywhere in the world simultaneously, but it's just one bird. This bird has lived forever. He lives in all places of the world simultaneously, and his name is Bob. And his name is Bob because when pigeons walk, their heads bob up and down, so it's a bob. You know. So Bob moves around the world backwards in time and allows him to be everywhere in the world simultaneously and be one bird. That's the theory. I'm not endorsing this theory, but it's a theory. And then Bob obviously he's literally in everywhere in the world. So he just moves around all the place. Yeah, he's sometimes in New York, and he's sometimes in London, and he's sometimes in Johannesburg, and he's sometimes in Buenos Aires, and he's sometimes in Berlin, and he's sometimes in Moscow, and he's sometimes in Beijing, and he's sometimes here, and he's sometimes there. But he's actually kind of everywhere because he's just moving backwards in time. So Bob. So every time you see a pigeon, remember it's only one bird, and his name is Bob, and he's moving backwards in time, and he's been around forever. And that allows him to travel all the way around the world, all simultaneously, even though he's only one bird. That's why also you never see Bob as dead. You see dead birds on the side of the road, but you've never seen a dead pigeon, right? That's why. Bob is just going backwards in time. One bird lives eternally. That's the theory of the Bob. In a certain way, Jan. But if he moves backwards in time, he can live in one universe, but everywhere at once. That's why Bob doesn't die, because he's actually going backwards in time. So you never see a dead Bob on the side of the road. He can also magically transport himself anywhere in the world because he's moving faster to speed of light because he's moving backwards in time. Something like that. Anyway. So Stephen the Seagull here finds this particular situation comfortable. I don't know why, but hey. And amongst all of his detritus. So anyway, um, So you have the Tower Bridge, and I think it's the London Bridge. I'm not quite sure. And now we approach St. Paul's, which famously survived the Blitz intact mostly, unlike most of the area around it, which was mostly destroyed. There's Stephen getting a stretch on after his nap, preparing to um, bird bomb some tourists down below. Then we have this, which I find interesting. Some sort of metal sculpture near St. Paul's. Thank you, Callan. Then I found a square which had this in it, which is an interesting bronze sculpture. I think it's based on Alice in Wonderland. And then we have all these animals around having tea together. All the animals of the wild. So here is in the London borough of Islington, Martha's Buildings. The private road. There's some sort of history to this, I forget what it was, but this is actually a bunch of private roads, basically. It's one of the few private roads within London, especially like central London. That's interesting, Calla. Is it the same type of, same exact sculpture or something like it? Brooks Court. So this counts as like a sunny day in England, by the way. Like there's still a lot of clouds in the sky, but it's sunny out and it's kind of broken. You can see some blue. This is a blue, bright, shiny blue sky day. This is about as good as it gets. Ah, yes, that's very true, Kellen. So here's another narrow alleyway with a Dutch angle. There's a little placard there, but I can't read that. And now we enter the temple temple region um of London. So Temple region is, or what we call it exactly, Temple District, was originally the original Knights Templar temple within London and the central church of the Templar movement in London. And the Templars are very instrumental in in the legal system of England early on, and they like to boast that they were instrumental in like the Magna Carta and stuff. And so even after the Templars were dissolved or expelled and all, they still continue on in a lot of places in England actually. Um, and so there's a whole district in London called Temple, and there's an inner temple, there's a middle temple, and there's an outer temple as you go outward. And to this day, Temple district is kind of like the legal district because nearby is like the Lincoln Court, or what is called uh Lincoln something like Lincoln Court. And the Lincoln Court is like almost like the guild of lawyers in England. In order to be a practicing lawyer, you have to join the Lincoln Court, whatever it's called. And this area is known for like all its lawyers and courts and attorneys and stuff like that. And the Templars were like patrons of all that early on. They like to claim they were big on rule of law and trying to establish legality in England early on. Um, and this will come up later because when I go to Cambridge, there's another um, temple round church in there, and there's a big Templar history in Cambridge as well. And of course, I was staying at Airbnb on the A10, which is the original Roman road in Britain that links London to Cambridge and eventually on to York. But um, so all this stuff is interconnected. But anyway, this is as you go from like the street into like the outer court of Temple District. You have this interesting sculpture. I'm not quite sure what it's about, but this guy is reaching out. And this is part of the outer court. They have this interesting court area. Feels very steampunky. And this area is very quiet. Like it was a big ornate public square, and there's a lot of areas around here which are very busy. And you go into here, and there's like nobody around in the middle of the day. It's almost spooky. I don't know what's going on. There's like nobody around here. The whole Temple district just felt very almost spookily underpopulated somehow. I don't know. In a very busy part of town, and there's nobody around here. um, you can almost hear like your footsteps on the pavement kind of thing. Yes, it was sort of like that, Cal. I did give me that feel. Thank you, Nima. I tried. I tried. um, the Inns of Court at Lincoln Park or whatever it was. The Inns of Court are the actual like trade guild of lawyers in England. And here's the sculpture we saw earlier. A lot of busty ladies, very Victorian. I think this might be a World War One memorial of lawyers who volunteered and were killed in the war. And this is the actual, I forget what it's called exactly. I could look that up. But let's look at the map for a minute. Uh, Temple Church. Ah, it's over here. Okay. Or maybe that's a different church. Oh yeah, the Inner Temple Garden. Okay, we're gonna get there. So I'm thinking, oh yeah, Lincoln's Inn Fields. This is it, right over here. Yes, exactly. So this area, which is sort of right, it's Farringdon, the British Museum. So it's on that side. Okay, I'm here. This is this road. You can't really see it very well, but it's right on the east side is me. But this is okay. So we're over here near Hoban. Hoban and Temple. There's a ship. I never saw that. There's another ship. I didn't see that one. Okay. But if you stay in this park, which is very pretty, you can often see lawyers coming out for lunch and discussing legal cases and stuff like this, supposedly. So, or discussing legal theory or whatever, that sort of thing. And here we're going along the Strand. And Strand is an old English word meaning a beach, or like a almost like a river, a shore line, but on a river, like a riverbank, often used as a trading place. People would, beach a boat full of goods to trade, and then people in the area would meet them there along the Strand. The River Thames has been filled in a number of times to get narrower over time, and so this used to be the riverbank, but now it's considered way inland by multiple city blocks. Sort of like New York. Lower Manhattan used to be a lot smaller, and they built piers out to the water, and then they filled in the space between those piers, and they built a new street, and they could put buildings in there, and then they put new piers out, and then they filled that in, and they made more and more New York that way over time. So you get something like Front Street, which is originally the actual waterfront, which is like almost the middle of Lower Manhattan, and then out from that you have like Pearl Street, where they actually caught pearls off the docks, but and that got filled in, and then it's like Water Street, which is still inland, and then it's actually West Street, which is actually the modern, coast of the city of New York. So it's sort of like that, where they keep just being filling in, filling in, filling in. But originally, the Strand was the actual banks of the River Thames, where people would trade. So it's called the Strand now. That's of course just a very posh shopping area. If you ever see a strand anywhere in England, that means like a riverbank, especially a flat, straight one, which you could easily put a boat along, almost like a dock or a wharf, like a natural wharf almost. And then we came to this. So there's this museum, which I think, let's see if we can locate it. This is this the Edgar Wallace? No. Um, is this the Hunterian Museum? I'm not sure. There is this. Let's go back. So this is actually, oh, maybe, oh, but Okay, I don't remember exactly what this is, but this is a actual royal palace on the Strand, but it's not inhabited these days by the royal family, but instead is used as usually like a museum space or a municipal space of some kind. Um, they have different exhibits, or they have like a Ferris wheel, or there's other things going on. Um, I actually went into the museum on the right, and there's some interesting exhibits. There was no photography allowed, so couldn't get any pictures inside. But and here's a close up of the Ferris wheel. But there is like the London Eye, which is like a large Ferris wheel. I don't think it's still up there. And then they had this, which is a much smaller version of the same thing. But I found it odd that you went in this little, archway into this courtyard, into this, ornate building, and there's a Ferris wheel in the middle. Like, what that's about. Okay. Right in the middle of London. It's like, okay. Um, so that was that. Yes, that's in Cala. Um, so you had to go through this little thing. And you would never notice it there unless you just look down some side street. You'd never notice this, and you enter into his courtyard, and then suddenly you have a Ferris wheel in the middle of London. Okay. I found this interesting. So some guy coming home, I guess, from his job in the city, and he's going through Temple. I found the black door, and I don't know, it's found interesting. And then you have another street scene. And here's another entrance from like the outer temple part to the middle temple or something like that. It's one of these thresholds. The city of Westminster. An interesting weather vane on top. And now we are entering from the city of Westminster to the city of London. Okay, not to be confused with Greater London or the Corporation of London. Okay. Um, when you enter, you pass by these sort of gate guards everywhere you go, which are represented by the White Dragon of England. And there's a story in Arthurian legend that involves, I won't get into all the details, but essentially the symbol of England is a white dragon, and the symbol of Wales is a red dragon. So you obviously have in England, the capital, or of London, the capital of England, they have a lot of displays of white dragons with the red cross of St. George. It's very prominent everywhere. So now you're literally changing jurisdiction. You're if you cross this pillar, you're literally leaving England into the semi detached, autonomous, whatever it is, nobody can quite exactly tell you what it is, city, the corporation of the City of London, which is in England, but not quite of England. It's almost a different thing. Um, Due to that deal that William the Conqueror made in 1066. He would respect the city of London as distinct from the rest of England. In return for they would recognize him as king. They would crown him as king. But he couldn't take up residence there because he would therefore he could be the king of England. But whether or not he was the king of London is something else. And of course, the Saxons couldn't invade London either. So they made their own separate pact and all this. And it's rumored whether or not um, what's his name? Alfred the Great, Saxon king, had some sort of special deal with London as well. Nobody quite knows, but it's rumored. London's always been different, not quite the same thing. It's a different police department. It's a different fire department. It's a different taxation system. It's a different, even laws are different. The main reason why London became a financial center um, is because they had special laws. Normally, come out of the Middle Ages and you had laws against usury and stuff. So money lending was not normally possible. High finance and usually in the Middle Ages not possible. And so you had to have special arrangements sometimes in order to have money lending. And one of them was that the city of London could, by royal charter, have different laws than the rest of England. So they decided they could have usury. And they could do some special financial stuff, right? And so they became the financial center that is London as a result of that. And to this day, they do have different laws. Um, and what was I gonna say? So it's and like a lot of the shadow banking and the all the kind of offshore, tax haven, all that kind of stuff. A lot of that stuff flows through the city of London. So the reason why like all those little Caribbean islands, like the Bahamas and the Cayman Islands and all that stuff, the reason why they're tax shelters is because they contain branch banks of banks from the city of London. And there's different, bank secrecy laws and all this stuff for London versus England. And the British authorities in theory can't like do anything in there. They're different. So they can't. If you have a law in England that says you can't do this, it doesn't necessarily apply in London. They can do different things, and they can have shadowy, you know, shady stuff going on. And there's nothing you can do because we have this charter that goes back 1,000 years. If they were different, and and we have our special own police department. So if your police come into our city, they're gonna have to deal with our police, and we'll serve the warrant, maybe or maybe not. Um, the city of London agrees to cooperate with the English authorities, but they and the English um, crown, but they do not submit themselves to the English authorities and the English crown. That's that kind of right. Um, they are their own thing. So, so if you see one of these columns somewhere, you're entering a different place. You're leaving England and entering someplace else. It looks a lot like London, but it is London, but it's the other London. I'll leave it at that. And here we are along the Strand. And the Strand is a major bike lane, goes through this area. Okay, there's the London Eye, the actual proper Ferris wheel in London, which is different than what we saw. Um, so we got the Mini Eye we saw earlier. And all this area you see here was built up. This actually I'm not sure if it's the embankment or the Strand. They're both built along the bank of the River Thames. This was originally kind of a tidal flat area. Nobody built anything on here. I think during the 19th century they had a big cholera outbreak due to bad water and sort of bad sewage systems. And part of the reforms of all that was they built a whole new sewer system underneath the streets of London, and it all collected into this main sewer pipe, which would collect everything and discharge all the sewage water away from the city. You originally discharged directly into the River Thames, and that created a lot of pollution and a lot of outbreaks and stuff, and just bad air. All this stuff literally kind of wafting up. So they take a big pipe, collect up all the sewage, and they would send it way down the river. Now, admittedly, down river means into somebody else's backyard, but hey, okay, it's another town down to whatever. There was no, sewage treatment at the time. um, but it would be taken away from the city of London, right, way down river, and it would be collected by a single large pipe. And his pipe was so big they couldn't bury it. So what they did instead is simply put it along the riverbank, which is directly underneath where this picture is taken. And then they built up the riverbank, up the street level, which is like up the side of the river, and built this big promenade, like what you see here, with like a linear public park along the riverbank for people to enjoy, because this is the era when public parks are becoming a thing. When Central Park was being made, and like all the big parks in London, all that kind of stuff this was the beginning of the era. They built a big public park directly over the sewage pipe, this gigantic sewage pipe, along the riverbank, and that's why it's all built up like a very high. You can see over the distance over the river here, but like there's major sewage pipes right underneath us. And later on, they had water pipes, and there's also the major trunk line that connects all the various systems of the tube travel directly underneath this, and it's literally a tunnel underneath us between the riverbank and this area here. But it was originally built as a sewer pipe, or at least for a sewer pipe. And that's where the bank, there's a whole um part of London called Bank. Um, and it's built along the embankment on the side of the river, and that's what this is. Now, it's very confusing because this is also the City of London, which is a major world banking center, like a financial bank. So it's very confusing when you go to bank, not the bank, just bank. You think you're going to the financial center. You're not. You're going to the embankment along the river. But anyway, so that's that. That's bank. Um, um, big, Jan. It's filled with a lot of kind of they have different kind of I want to call themed areas, but it's not just greenery. Because it's a 19th century park, there's like terraces and there's paved areas and there's a big fountain called Bethesda Fountain or Bethesda Fountain, which I do recommend you visit. It's very pretty, but there's a lot of greenery, but there's a lot of like, not greenery. Okay. There's actually a lot of ponds and lakes in Central Park and all this kind of stuff. Um, there's only really one area of Central Park which I would consider kind of like a wild park or something which has like which doesn't look built up some way. Um, the rest of it's very constructed and artificial looking. It's nice, but it's very artificial. Okay, it's very paved over and built up and neatly, neat rows of trees rather than just wild trees. You know what I'm saying? There's only one part of it, and that's called the Ramble, near 72nd Street, and it's a nice area. It's easy to get lost in there. Nice area during the day. I would not recommend you go there at night, even today. Back in the day, it was really bad. These days, it's simply shady. Okay. At night, yeah, New York is a very safe city in a lot of ways. It's much, 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 much safer than it used to be, and I think it's still like the safest big city outside of East Asia in the world. I mean, it really is. It has like the lowest crime rate per capita of any big city outside like East Asia. Um, but there's still some sketchy areas, and the Ramble is one of them. So I would not be there caught. I'd have to be caught there after night, after sunset kind of thing. Um, but otherwise, but there's a bunch of interesting areas, but it's all very manicured except for the Ramble. It has a very manicured feel to it. Um, there are better parks if you want like a wild park within the city limits. I can go over those, but um, a good idea of what Central Park is like. It's a very large park. It is. There are actually much larger ones within city limits. One of the key things you have to know about it is it's kind of like a long and narrow. It's quite long. I mean, it's not. I gotta think about it. It's like what? 50 city blocks, which is what? 2.5 miles long. I mean, it's long, but not that long. But if you're in the middle of it, it's very easy to see from one side to the other. Okay, it's very few places where you're completely cut off, so to speak. And from one side to the other, I mean like east west, like the narrow part. If you're standing in the middle, you can see all the way to the east side, all the way to the west side. The streets all the way on either side of you. You're rarely that lost, or you're that kind of right. You know what I'm saying? It's not that kind of park. Um, Van Cortlandt Park is very different. That is a very different park. Certain parts of Pelham Bay Park are like that. Where you actually can get lost in the city. Um, in spite of the fact that it's smaller, Prospect Park in Brooklyn, you can actually get lost in that pretty well. You don't feel like you're in the middle of the city as much as you do in Central Park. Um, and then once you get like into the outer parts of the city, like the actual outer parts of the city, like Alley Pond Park or something, you can really get lost out there. But those feel like a large suburban park. They have this interesting design on the side of a bench with these camels. Probably dates 19th century, Victorian era. I thought that was interesting. If you look on the bottom here, SLB Foundry. Come back. I'm not losing it, right? We're losing it. Uh, uh, okay, we're losing something here. A minute. All right, so do that. Come back. Let's see. SLB Foundry. Um, Sittingbourne, Kent. So this was cast somewhere in Kent, which we will be going to shortly. I need a different cyclist here. Kind of interesting. Guy and a lady. And then looking to this, we're looking towards the south end of London, or south, whatever it's called, south side. There's an east end and there's a west end of London, either side of the city of London. East and east end, west end, and there's a south side. There's not a south and east, southeast and southwest side. It's just the south side. Those are the three directions in London: east, west, and south. There's no north. North is just England. Yes, it's impressive, I guess, is the best way to put it. It's okay. There's better parts of New York, in my opinion. It's interesting. I would not spend too much time there. I do think the top of the rock, which is the observation tower on top of Rockefeller Center, that is worth your time. That is the best observation tower in the city. Um, the rest of it on ground level is okay. 3 out of 5, maybe. I can think of better things to do. Now we are in Temple District. This is the original, whatever it was, 13th century, 1200s, probably early 1200s, 1100s, Templar round church in the middle of Temple, District of London. And this is where the Templars met to do whatever Templars do. Temple Church since 1162. There you go. London's Jerusalem since 1214. Cradle of the common law. That's Magna Carta. Since 1584. North America's church in London. Exhibit the temple, Magna Carta, and the road to the rule of law. Admitted for sightseeing, and so on and so on and so on. Okay. Yes, indeed, Jan. Thanks, guys. I use my compositional skills. And here we are with our Templars. They would double up on a horse to save money. You don't need 2 horses for 2 guys. You only need 1 horse for 2 guys. Though I don't want to be that horse. I would not want to be a horse. And this area is just very abandoned. It's like you can go here and there's nobody else around in the middle of the day. It's a very busy city. I don't know what people are like wanting to avoid this area. I don't know what it is. There's these benches there and nobody's sitting anywhere in a busy city. Very interesting. And this is a colonnade that leads from the inner temple, which you saw, to the middle temple. interesting sculpture in the area. This reminds me in of a bronze that's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, of this girl who I think is supposed to be like a ballerina. And it's almost a kind of similar outfit and like that black bronze. I don't remember what it's called, but there's a famous statue like that. I've seen a number of times. Um, but this reminded me of that statue, so I had to take a picture of it. And then I was staying in an area called near Hoxton. Let's go back to our map here. Clerkenwell. Okay, so I'm staying in this area. Here's the Sulmani Mosque next to. It's very pretty inside. Uh, yeah, I never went inside, but this is the mosque next to where I was staying. Turkish. This whole Turkish area where I was staying. Anyway, so I'm in this area, right? And then the nearby. So if you go, so this is part of what's called Shoreditch within Greater Hackney. So this is Greater Hackney, but it goes in that direction, right? And then Shoreditch is down below the part below the canal. Haggerston is just above us. This area just above us. Dalston, we can find it. Dalston is the area above that. So this is Dalston. Dalston Junction, where I did a lot of shopping. Islington is sort of to the west of where we were. Hackney is kind of the west. Um, Whitechapel, which is famously haunted by Jack the Ripper, is just to the south. The city is just to the southwest. You guys can't really see my cursor, unfortunately, but um, and then Hoxton was, I think, right, just so here is Kingsland Road. If you can see the middle here, this is Kingston Road, right, along where the mosque is, and then just to the west of that is Hoxton, and just to the north of the canal is Haggerston. And I always remembered those names because the two overground stations that were next to me that connected me into the greater tube system were Hoxton to the south, Hoxton Station, which is like 2 blocks south of me, and Haggerston Station, which is 2 blocks north of me. So you could walk 2 blocks north and get to Haggerston Station. Or yeah. So I was very much in Hoxton Haggerston area. Um, including this Hoxton Brothers food. This is my local bodega of sorts. Um, it was a kind of Turkish bodega. That guy actually served me. That guy was behind the counter most of the time. But I had all, yeah, generally all any kind of supplies you needed. You could go here. Hoxton Brothers. You could buy groceries. You could buy snacks and drinks and charge cords for your phone and whatever you needed. They had an ATM right around the corner where I lived. Right, they had ice cream. You get the idea. They had all these Turkish foods, imported foods, and uh, some Italian stuff, some Greek stuff. So if you like that kind of stuff, it was. So I was in Hoxton, Greater Shoreditch, and you go on the block for where I was staying, and there's this Hoxton girl. Yes, they have everything there nearby. They had everything there. It was this little store which was like must have been 200 square feet, and then it's bodega, so they had like everything stacked to the roofs, to the rafters, and every these narrow little they did everything. Yes, it's Turkish. Yes, Omar would like it. It's very Turkish. That was like a Turkish neighborhood almost. It was like everywhere, like half the businesses in the area were Turkish. I ate breakfast at like a Turkish diner a lot. It was down the street as well, and then there's some Turkish restaurants. I had dinner up the street. All stuff. It was always yeah, and they had like Turkish barber shops, and it was just yeah, it was very Turkish. Um, and then you go down the street a couple blocks, and you end up in the Vietnamese neighborhood, basically. But along the main road there, Kingsland Road and all the other names had, um, was a very because Shoreditch was very sort of hip, um, sort of hipster neighborhood. It had like a lot of nightclubs and all night bars and um stuff like that, boutique shops and whatever along the main street. And those are up all night, but they're British up all night, so they're very quiet and respectful of when it's 2 a.m. They'll the British will party through the night, but they won't bother you with noise. they they're very British. Um, I like to say visiting the UK is like Britain is almost I'd say like Japan, but without suicide rate. You know what I'm saying? It's that kind of a country. You really to get that kind of vibe that people are very kind of respectful of social norms and each other, and they don't want to get in each other's way, and that kind of um they kind of cooperate to not get in each other's way kind of thing, or right, or be a problem for each other. It feels very Japanese in some ways. Um, if you've ever if you ever know anything about visiting Japan, it has that kind of feel to it, but without the suicide rate. Without the kind of like social pressure that comes with the suicide rate. So it very much gave me those vibes. But anyway, um, so anyway, so here we are in Hoxton, mate, and everybody there is mate. You think Australians call each other mate? It's not true. It's the British. They do that. I never once encountered a bloke ever, except well, only once, and that was in Wales, and that I think was in jest by some youths who were speaking in jest. Everybody's mate in that country. Okay, everybody. Yes, actually, supposedly they do, Gian. I actually have a picture we can bring it up of another Turkish bodega in the area which had a. I'll bring that up in a moment, Gian, which had a bodega cat. Yeah, a lot of New York bodegas have bodega cats. It's pretty common. Exactly, Nemo. Welcome to London, especially if you're in like a hipster neighborhood. And there's a lot of old school hackneys, like very old school working class Londoners with very thick accents, very thick, like you could not understand them half the time. And they would walk into a shop sometimes, and yeah, the Turks spoke good English, and the Vietnamese spoke good, and then the hackneys come in. It's like I don't understand what half they're saying. Or not hackneys, the what are they called? What's the um what's the term for a Londoner? Hold on a minute. I can't remember now, unfortunately. Um, what's the term? Yeah, yeah, that's actually pretty accurate. Everybody's like that. There's very few actual like posh accent people. That's rare. At least where I was. I was in East End. Maybe that's more common in the West End, but that's pretty rare where I was. Everybody was like that. Like, um, what's it called again? Oh, Cockney. Pardon me, Cockneys. So you get some old school Cockneys come in, and man, they were kind of speaking English, but I could not understand them. Um, Cockney. That's the word I'm looking for. Cockney, mate. But way more indecipherable than that. Um. Oh, and then I went to a different part of the neighborhood for a while to a different breakfast place, and it's pretty subtle at first, but it turned out the owners of that place were also Turkish. You didn't think it was first. It served people all over the neighborhood. There was even a part of Hackney. Hackney is very famously very diverse, but there's part of Hackney which is kind of Chinese, and it had a real Chinese clientele at this place. And you kind of wonder, and then you wonder who the owners are, proprietors, and eventually you figure out they are Turkish as well. Because every like 3/4 of the businesses in this area must be run by Turks. Yes, I have actually some recorded Welsh announcements, Shan. It is indecipherable. When I was at the train station there. I don't drink coffee, Jan, so no. Yes, there is. Um, England in particular has like a lot of regional accents, like a lot, dozens and dozens. It used to be a lot more. It's been consolidating over time, but there's still a lot. It's very noticeable if you go from London, different parts of London, versus if you go into the west, versus if you go, especially north. Like the accent becomes very different. You go north. Um, there's Hoxton girl, and there was actually a market was again like 1 day a week. Good luck catching it. It was actually like an open, like a farmer's market kind of deal around the. She's actually pointing it where it'd be. Um, but yeah, and there's Charlie Chaplin at the Hawks and Graphs, and this is all kind of the neighborhood I was staying in. So let's find that bodega cat from before. Um, and Jan, I do recommend you check up on some of the previous streams. Okay, here. Let us. So this is going to be 5, 6, 7. Woo! They changed their name, Jan. Peak District, yes. Yes. I have to look that one up. Peak District National Park. That's near Sheffield, which is considered the north of England. So I'm gonna bring the map back here. Let's go back. So, guys, the Peak District is here. London is down here. You can see all the things that I tried to see, but so it's here. So here's the Peak District in the quote unquote north of England near Sheffield and Manchester. Here's Manchester. I think this is Manchester. Manchester. And then Liverpool is over here. So there's Liverpool, Manchester, and here's the Peak District. Now, um, Nemo, is this the north of England to you? I mean, it looks like there's a lot more of England north of here. Okay. Right? Yeah. The British have a very strange sense of, especially the English, have a very strange sense of direction to me. It's sort of like, right, oh, this is the north. Yeah, but there's like half the country still to go. So if that's the north, yes, that's true. But I was up here in the actual north of England, and you know, it's sort of like in New York. There's like there's Midtown, Manhattan. There's downtown, uptown, right? Then there's Upper Manhattan, which is above uptown, and then there's Inwood, which is even above Upper Manhattan, but you're still in Manhattan. And then even above Inwood, there is Marble Hill, which is so far north of on Manhattan that's no longer on the island Manhattan. And similarly, you have Midtown, Downtown, and Lower Manhattan, which is it's sort of like go up and keep on going, and just keep going, kind of directions, right? Um, yes, indeed, Emma. Birmingham. So Birmingham is more down here. So here's Birmingham, I think. Yes. Birmingham is certainly north of London, but it's south of Manchester, Leeds, Sheffield, Liverpool, and that in turn is south of the actual north of England, which is up here, which in turn is south of Scotland. So, is that really north? I mean, this is like the middle of the country. This is the Midlands. This is the middle. I mean, but it's north of London, so I guess it's north. I mean, by English standards, you have London and you have like the West Country. The West Country is around here, around Salisbury, because it's west of London. The problem is you still have all of Devon, okay, and all of Cornwall, right? So that's west of West. You're still going west. You still have more London. You still have more England west of the west of England. Is that like more West England or? They have very strange in its direction, Ellie. Yes. So anyway, here is the Peak District around what's really the middle of the country, because I went actually north later on up to here, the actual north of England. Um, and this is what would originally be considered Mercia in the middle, and then the north is Northumbria and Ragged, um, and what's it called again? Um, uh, not Carlisle, but um, something like that, in the actual north of England. Back when it was the Heptarchy, the so-called seven kingdoms of England, which was never really seven, but whatever. Um, Before it was united as a single England, it was seven, quote unquote, seven kingdoms. And this area was Mercia in the middle of the country. And the north was definitely not that. It was something else. Um, so anyway, back to our bodega cats. Jan, we saw this earlier in the previous stream, Jan, but I'll show you again. What are we saying exactly? So, this is another Turkish bodega area with a proverbial bodega cat taking a nap on the street. And this is a very bodega. So, you have cash back, they'll cash checks for you. They do delivery, they have vapes. Okay, pay zone. I don't know what that is, but it sounds a little sketchy already. Uber Eats, wireless printing. So, they'll do printing for you like a print shop. They have various mini wines, a glass skull, Jack Daniels, um, various household items, including a hookah, water bottles, roll your own cigarettes, Camden Town Brewery, CCD cameras, because, there's a lot um, shoplifting in the area. Under 25, you will need ID. Okay. Um, an alarm system, a food hygiene rating. They have snacks up and down the side of the walls. They have fruit on the ground. So they have this guy who's coming home from a football game and he's buying some fruit. They sell wine next to the cat. Various snacks. There's various other snacks in the background. Pringles, others, this and I bet in the back they have like soda and milk and ice cream and all basic groceries in the back. And they probably have some basic electronics somewhere in the back shelf somewhere. And they have a balaclava in the middle of summer, but you gotta prepare for winter or robbing a store or whatever it is you're gonna do. But they have you equipped. Okay. This is very much a bodega, like an everything store. They sell everything under one roof, under one tiny roof. And because they sell so many food items, often in like open crates, they need a cat to keep away the vermin. So they have a bodega cat. Their back jam, is it back? So yeah, that's a very classic bodega. They would fit right into the Bronx somewhere. And of course, the stereotype in New York is that all Bronx bodegas are are Hispanic, but all Brooklyn bodegas are Arab. So, um, so here's the outside with our bodega cat and our footballer. There's bodega cat. See, it's they're selling tobacco, um, electronics under one roof. It is in their little, alleys to go in back, and they sell literally everything under one roof. And you go to the roof here, and it's Topagulu, very obviously Turkish, off license, which means they sell liquor amongst everything else. Grocery news agent Paypoint, fruit and veg. And then they have a little gated, little gate, or a little fenced area. It's probably a little garden. They look like they're maintaining a garden up here. They probably grow some tomatoes and other vegetables for themselves on the rooftop in the middle of the city. And they have a Ukrainian flag. So that is very, very stereotypically a bodega. If you need it, the bodega probably has it. If it was a New York bodega, they would probably have a grill in the back as well, so you could get hot food as long as it's a grill type of food. Largely extinct, Jan, except maybe on Staten Island. Most Italians have either moved to Connecticut, New Jersey, Staten Island, or Florida at this point. So, you ever seen the movie Saturday Night Fever, Jan? With what's his name? Um, um, yeah, Saturday Night Fever. Yeah. That would be that was set in, especially that opening scene is set in was actually shot on site in uh oh gosh, I can't remember now. Um, I can bring up the map. Let's bring up the map because I cannot remember anything. In Bensonhoist, in the neighborhood of Bensonhoist, right here. Right, you guys can see that. And that shot was actually on 86th Street, and the pizzeria he went to closed down like just a year or two ago. Um, this area was very solidly Italian back in the day. Like it was a major Italian neighborhood. I have an uncle back in the day, um, who lived in this area his whole life. He was super Italian, super Italiano. He was the most Italian New Yorker would ever meet. And he died in this. He lived and died in this neighborhood his whole life. He died in 2000. Um, right. And these days, when he died in this neighborhood in 2000, it was still solidly Italian, right? These days, this is a solidly Chinese neighborhood. Like if there are any Italians left, they are like on the very back streets. You would not notice them at all. There's just nothing left. They all moved to Staten Island or Jersey or Florida at this point. I think they moved to Staten Island. Honest to God. Um, because once you cross the ferry into Staten Island, and once you leave that immediate area of like St. George and Stapleton and stuff, and you go inland, so if you're in New York, you go from Manhattan up here, Staten Island down here, and there's St. George at the tippity top here, and then you go down to Tompkinsville and um this is Stapleton along the shore here, but you go in along Victory Boulevard. You see Victory Boulevard along here and Silver Lake. Once you go inland, it's very Italian. It's like super super Italiano. The accents change, the attitudes change, and that's probably the only part of New York that's left. Yes, John Travolta. Gal, thank you. Yeah, that was shot on 86th Street with the I think it's a D train that goes overhead. But that's the only part of it Italian part left in New York, I think. If even that. If you want Italian in New York, you go to Jersey. Now, where I live in Connecticut, is like 40% of the state is of Italian descent. I mean, not like new arrival, but it has the highest concentration of Italian descent in the country. It is the most Italian state in the country in a lot of ways. Um, and it shows like all the businesses. If you know people's names, it's all Italian names like everywhere. Like every mayor of every town, every even tiniest town out in the way out in the countryside. Um, and all the governor and everybody around here is Italian. That was a joke. Um, but it's a very New England Italian, which is very different from New York. Very different attitude. Um, I don't know that one. Gee, I have to look it up. Is this what you're talking about, Jim? Becker. Um, set in the Bronx. I mean, I'd like to know what part of the Bronx, because I know that borough thoroughly. There's so many different parts of the Bronx. They all look different from each other. Alright, it's just the Bronx, I guess. I don't know if it was. Well, I can look up more, I guess, but is it actually? It's CBS, so it's probably is shot. We can. Well, let's look at the IMDb. Oh, this Becker. I remember this series now. I was definitely blanking out on that. Oh, yeah, the guy from Lost too. That's cool. Yes, Jorge Garcia and Ted Danson. Okay. Uh Locations. Yeah, Astoria, mostly. So they have Astoria for the Bronx. That is no. That is a big no. Um, well, okay, so they were probably at whatever it's called, the whatchamacallits. The Astoria's up here, and the Bronx is over here. This is the Bronx. Astoria is down here. Very different neighborhood. But anyway, so yeah. Where is it exactly? Now they say it's Astoria, which is up here, but it's not where is it exactly? I'm thinking of something here. Is it Silver Cup or no? Is it the Kaufman Astoria? I forget. I'm blanking out here. What are you guys talking about? Oh, the cats. Well, it's a good kind of tired name. There is a Cabrini Street in Upper New York that offers great views of the George Washington Bridge. Let's see if we can get that. So you go up here, G-dub. Get to see the G-dub. So Cabrini Boulevard. Hey, get back up here. All right. Maybe you need a different view. Maybe I'm thinking of something else entirely. Okay. Oh, there it is. This is the entrance. The entrance. You can't see it too well, but there's the G-dub. Maybe it's better viewed from over here. A little bit. Well, there it is. It's a nice area during day. It's a little sketchy at night. It's basically the center of NYU, New York University, which is a very expensive, upscale university. I mean, I think it's the most expensive university in the U.S. by tuition, something like that. I think it's like $72,000 a year, something outrageous like that. So you get a lot of rich people going there. All the rich people send their kids there. So you get a lot of rich, spoiled kids. And it's like the only open space in the area. So it's the only way the place to gather that's not indoors. So here's Washington Square Park, downtown. Famously, it is located where Fifth Avenue meets Fifth Street, or what should be Fifth Street. We can look at here. It's got nice views. It has the arch. This is definitely one of my favorite hangout spots. There's usually a lot of music in the summer. At night, it could get a little sketchy. There's one part of the park where all the drug dealers and stuff go. If you don't want to go there, you don't have to go there, and they don't bother you if you don't bother them. Um, at night, sometimes there can be fights. There can be weird behavior. Um, I've been there at night. It's not bad. It's usually busy round the clock. Maybe not 2 a.m. or something, but up to midnight or something. They hold parties in the middle. The uni kids, NYU kids hold parties there and stuff. Yeah. So it's very gentrified at this point. I don't know if it ever was anything else, but it's like this. You have the big fountain, and then we're probably on top of the arch right now, and everything you see around you is the university, all the surrounding buildings. And I actually have pictures of all this. I have to dig them out, but uh, yeah, that's nice hangout spot. If you can find a bench to sit down. It's very crowded most of the time, so good luck sitting down. Um, Searching it. So New York is divided into 5 boroughs, which are also 5 counties in the state of New York. There's the city of New York and the state of New York. And the state is named for the city. Um, so New York, if we can pull out over here, well, bigger geography-wise, it exists on the U.S. East Coast, obviously. East Coast. It's located at where the Hudson River, which you can hardly see underneath all this, but this is down the middle. You can see here is the Hudson River, and the Hudson River goes all the way to the Canadian border up here at Plattsburgh and all the way up to Montreal almost. Hudson River is the largest river east of the Mississippi, which is the largest river in the United States. right? So of the eastern United States, which is everything east of the Hudson River or the Mississippi River, it is the largest river in the east by drainage. So New York sits where the largest river in the east meets the ocean. And at that location, there is effectively, you could say, um, what's the word I'm looking for here? An archipelago of islands, a whole bunch of little islands at this mouth of the river. Um, and so you have the mainland. You see here on the west is New Jersey. To the north, you have Connecticut, where I am. I'm right about here. See where those hearts are? I'm about there. You can then go up a narrow stretch into Yonkers and upstate New York, up here, which goes up the river. And then at the mouth of the river, you have, it's hard to pick out exactly, but you have, see this is the island of Manhattan. And the island of Manhattan looks like a narrow ship in the sea. It's completely covered with markers right now, but and the island of Manhattan is about 2 miles wide, 3 kilometers wide, and about 12 miles long, so maybe 18 kilometers long. And it separates the Hudson River on to its west from the East River to its east, as it suggests. And to the east of Manhattan, which is right, also New York County, within New York City, within New York State, is Long Island, or Long Island. Long Island. And on Long Island, which is this island here, so again, we have Manhattan. Unfortunately, you can't see my cursor, but that'd be helpful if you could see my cursor. I don't know how to show that. But you have Long Island, or you have Manhattan Island. And then to the east of that, you have Long Island, which is this Long Island out to here. And Long Island stretches out into the Atlantic Ocean and protects Connecticut, which is up here, from the worst of the Atlantic storms. And you can continue to go up the coast. You get to Rhode Island, and then Massachusetts and Boston, which is New England, not to be confused with New York. So that's to the east of Manhattan. To the west of Manhattan is New Jersey, a completely different state, has no relationship. And to the south, in New York Harbor, which is in here, or Upper New York Bay, that separates it from Staten Island, which is an island you can see is a narrow channel of water called the Arthur Kill, which separates Staten Island from New Jersey, the mainland. So this is New Jersey, but this isn't. So anyway, these are all a bunch of islands within New York Harbor. New York Harbor has an upper bay in here between Bayonne and Jersey City, New Jersey, Manhattan to the north, Brooklyn to the south, Staten Island or southeast, Staten Island to the south, and then you have outer New York Bay, which separates Brooklyn to the north, Staten Island over here, and then Sandy Hook, part of New Jersey over here. So the city of New York spreads out over 5 counties within the state of New York. It is large enough that it covers multiple counties. It covers the county of New York, which is the island of Manhattan, which you can see in here, which I have completely covered with markers. I'm going to get rid of some of those markers right now. That is one of the 5 counties in the state of New York, which is also a borough within the city of New York. And then Long Island, well, let's go on the mainland. So if you go on the mainland, see, this is the Harlem River, which separates Manhattan from the mainland. And the mainland, which is within the city of New York, is the Bronx. Roughly, you see this park in the northwestern corner here. This is Van Cortlandt Park. That top of the park is the city line, basically. And you just stretch that city line straight across. You include Pelham Bay Park in here. That's all within city limits. And that's all the Bronx. And the Bronx is the sort of mainland part of New York City. And that feeds into the mainland of the mainland. The actual, continental piece of the United States versus the island of Manhattan. And then south, on sort of to the east of Manhattan, on Long Island, you have the main part. Immediately east of it is Queens, out to right here, which is Little Neck Bay. Approximately this line from here, stretching down to JFK Airport down here. That line, if you see a little highway going through it, that's approximately the city line. And that's Queens, this whole northern part. And then the part that kind of sends below Manhattan, you can see that. So it's Manhattan is up below a certain point, and then this sort of like almost tumor that extends below it. That's Brooklyn. That's Kings County. Queens County and Kings County. And the borough of Brooklyn, named originally for the city of Brooklyn, there's a whole history behind that, but we won't get into that, is, as they say, conterminous with the County of Kings. A conterminous means something which extends over the same area as something else, which cohabitates the same area, which there is no area which is part of A, which is not also part of B. There's no part of the borough of Brooklyn which is not also the County of Kings. Right? There is such a thing as Los Angeles City, and there's Los Angeles County. Los Angeles City does not extend over all of Los Angeles County. There is Los Angeles Police Department, the city police department, and then there's a Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, which extends over all those parts of the county which are not part of the city. The County of Kings and the borough of Brooklyn are conterminous. They follow the same area, even though they are legally distinct entities. Within state administrative purposes, the borough of Brooklyn is referred to as the County of Kings. For city administrative purposes, the County of Kings is referred to as the borough of Brooklyn. Okay? And then finally, Staten Island down here is its own borough. It's sometimes called the Forgotten Borough because it's like completely separated. There was once a dispute between the state of New York and the state of New Jersey over who owned Staten Island, because very obviously it is down here. It's part of New Jersey. Okay. There was a dispute and almost came to blows. They both mobilized the militia, state militias. At the last minute, they negotiated a deal. And New York got to keep the island of Staten down here. Mostly as a kind of as a breadbasket for the city of New York. It was originally rural and agricultural, and it was basically to help feed the growing city of New York. And these days, of course, that's no longer the case, but once upon a time it was. That's kind of why they keep that. And since New York is big, and New Jersey is not, New York won that dispute. Let's put it that way. And so Staten Island belongs to New York, even though it's way down here. Now New York was originally just Lower Manhattan, basically just this. And it grew and it grew and it grew. And it grew to encompass the entire island of Manhattan, which it wasn't originally that way. There was originally other towns and other villages within the island of Manhattan. But eventually it grew. And so by about 1855, it became the whole island. Then, in 1898, it was agreed that the city was growing so much, it would be useful if the city administration extended over some surrounding areas. Namely, well, mostly over Brooklyn, because that kind of made sense, because Brooklyn was its own city at one point, a rival New York in population, prestige, and industry and economy. But they, as they said, had a marriage between two different cities. The city of New York and the city of Brooklyn, they got married in 1898. And they took with them this part of the county of Queens. Originally, the county of Queens would extend it all the way out into what's called Nassau, which goes out to about this point here. And everything you see this point here? This Tesla monument, everything pretty much west of that is Queens in 1897. But then the city of New York takes everything up to this point here, annexes it into the city, and calls it the County of Queens and the Borough of Queens within the city of New York. And the rest of Queens County becomes Nassau County because it's no longer Queens County because the city of New York stole Queens County from Queens County. And while they're at it, they took a piece of the mainland. And so they took the Bronx. And the Bronx was part of what is called Westchester County. Westchester County is pretty much all of this in here up to, I don't know how far up exactly, but about here. That's all Westchester County, which is the county north in New York State, north of the city of New York. And so New York said, well, we want the southern third of it. And we're New York, and we're more than half the population of the state, and we're 3/4 of the economy of the state. So if we want it, we can just take it. Okay? There's nothing you say about that. So they wanted a piece of the mainland, and they got a piece of the mainland. And while they're at it, Staten Island down here, it's completely cut off from the rest of the state of New York. Might as well come along for the ride. And those are the 5 boroughs of the city of New York. There's a couple more details I get into, but that's basically it. Yeah, so Coney Island was an island, and now it's not part of the island, but it's this down here. This little peninsula down here at the bottom of Brooklyn. Here's Brooklyn, you can see. All this is Brooklyn. Well, you can't quite see that, but it's basically this entire tumor that's sort of between the upper bay in here with Statue of Liberty in it and Jamaica Bay in here. All this is Brooklyn. And Coney Island is this part down here. It's a neighborhood within Brooklyn. It was once an island, like legitimately an island. However, you can see there's Coney Island Creek goes in here. It only goes up to here. It originally extended all the way across and cut off Coney Island from the mainland of Long Island. But then they filled it in, and so it's now, connected. And there's still one theme park left from the olden days. It is not the original Luna Park, though. There was, I think, 3 or 4 original theme parks, what do you call it, on Coney Island. They all closed down by like the 1940s or so. I think it was like World War II was the end of them. And then there's a modern Luna Park, which is here. This was built in the 80s as kind of like a homage to, nostalgia or something. I don't know. It's reconstructed on the site of the original Luna Park, or approximately, but it has no connection to the original park. These days, well, there's Manhattan Beach and there's Seagate. We'll put those aside for a minute. You can see Seagate and Manhattan Beach here. Those are kind of rich gated communities. Ignoring those for a moment, the rest in the middle here, of which is Coney Island proper, is it's a pretty impoverished area. It's a very remote. It takes like an hour on a subway to get out here. It's a remote part of Brooklyn, and it's pretty impoverished. It's pretty, yeah, it's pretty gritty. You ever seen the movie Requiem for a Dream by Darren Aronofsky? It is set in here. And that was a pretty accurate description of Coney Island back in the 80s and 90s. It's pretty gritty. It's pretty depressed, especially like Western Neptune Avenue along here. This part, that is pretty sketchy area. Let me tell you. Most of New York is not that bad these days, but that part is a little sketchy to me. Um, you would not want to persist too long in there, in my opinion, on the street unless you had business there. Um, yeah, it feels a little weird. Um, and then even just the eastern part is like it's pretty run down. It's pretty right low rent area. Um, and it's basically it feels like a kind of outlying impoverished suburb, like a place they put all the poor people, and then they ignore all the infrastructure, and it's run down and gritty, and they can kind of ignore the area. Frankly, it has that kind of feel to it. Now, Manhattan Beach is not that at all. Seagate is not that at all. Those are very different areas. But the center part, yeah. Um, it is interesting. And you have to understand that the city of Brooklyn is up here in the north part. This is the urbanized part of Brooklyn. This is, downtown Brooklyn, Garden, Gardens, Park Slope, Bed-Stuy, Crown Heights, all of that part, Bushwick. This is that part of Brooklyn. This is the Brooklyn part of Brooklyn. The people think of Brooklyn. This is the Spike Lee part of Brooklyn. Okay, there's a whole another Brooklyn down here. Okay, this is a very suburbanized part of Brooklyn, especially not so much on the west part here, Bay Ridge and Borough Park. Once you get out here into Canarsie and Flatlands and Marine Park, especially Graves and Sheepshead, this is very, very suburban. You feel like you're in suburban America. You don't feel like you're in New York City anymore. Okay, you are in, yeah. Most of the housing out here is pretty expensive. Single family detached housing, it's very different from the rest of the city. And then you pass through all of that, okay, and you end up in Coney Island, which is kind of a slum. At the very, 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 very end of the train line, you come to a slum. And that's where they park all the people you don't want to show to tourists. Um, okay, see you later, Nemo. I do not recall. I think it was we could look that. So I think it was in Yonkers or something. Let's look that up. Son of Siam. Uh David Berkowitz. Buckowitz. It's a book of wits. Alright, so blah 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 blah. Uh um Pelham Bay. Okay. Okay. Queens. Well, we'll look that up. I can show you the map here. Yeah, you're seeing that, right? Yeah. So yeah, up here, you see Pelham Bay that's in the Bronx, Queens. Um, so if that's his main crime speed, it's like way up there. This is most definitely not Brooklyn. See, this is not Brooklyn. This is not Brooklyn. I mean, we're down here. He's like up here, I guess. I have to look into that more, but it seems like the opposite end of town, basically. Oh, and here's Floyd Bennett Field nearby, which is where what's his name? Uh I'm blanking on names here. Um Lindbergh, what's his name first name? Um I can't think of names here. Charles Lindbergh. He took off from Floyd Field across the Atlantic back in 1927 or whatever it was. And Floyd Field was the original airport of New York. But that's another story. So here's basically Brighton Beach. This is where all the Russians settled back in the day. If you go in this area, Brighton Beach, along this part of the, there's a boardwalk. This is the um, Coney Island Boardwalk. You cross a certain point, and then everybody's speaking Russian. You enter certain parts of the neighborhood, and it's all Russian after a while. Um, you just cross the street, and that's very New York sometimes. You cross the street and you enter a different linguistic zone. Is the best way I can describe it. Um, it's especially true in Brooklyn or anywhere else. Um, so, does anybody have any further cues before we call it a day? We've been doing this now for 4 hours, I think. um, yeah, almost 4 hours. It's a very long stream. Um, you guys still with me? Someday, Jan. Okay, Cal. Well, if you have no further questions, guys, I will call it a night. I will thank Nemo and Kala, and especially Jan, for showing up. If you want to see more Jan, you can look at my previous streams on this channel. Make sure you are subscribed to this channel, obviously. This is all my bike stuff and travel stuff.